In the 1890s, railroad companies started locking their money inside heavy express safes. Outlaws answered by packing those safes with black powder or dynamite until the blast could tear apart the car around them. They did not need to win a gunfight, they only needed a fuse. Everyone remembers Colt revolvers and Winchester rifles. Almost nobody remembers the hidden blades, weighted clubs, disguised canes, and silent pocket weapons Western killers reached for when a gun was too loud, too obvious, or too slow. Number 14 could crush a skull from a coat pocket. Number 3 could ride in a glass bottle and rip iron open like weak wood. These are 20 forgotten weapons Wild West outlaws used to kill without a gun. If you like the Old West after the movie version falls apart, hit like, subscribe, and tell me what state you're watching from. Number 20, the straight razor. It was made for shaving, which is exactly what made it so dangerous. A razor did not look like a weapon sitting on a washstand or folded inside a pocket. It looked ordinary. But once it opened, the edge was already built for skin. In a cramped boarding house room, a saloon back hall, or a gambling argument that turned ugly at arm's reach, that mattered. A knife usually announced itself when the hand went for the sheath. A razor could appear in the same movement as a man reaching into his coat. One fast slash across the face, neck, or hand could end the fight and understood the weapon had changed. By the late 1800s, some Western laws were already treating razors carried as a weapon like the rest of the deadly concealed arsenal. That tells you how little respect people had for the harmless barbershop version. Number 19, brass knuckles. A fistfight was common. Brass knuckles made it something else. Slip a small metal frame over the fingers, close the hand, and every punch landed with hard edges instead of bare bone. Teeth cracked, lips split. Cheekbones broke. A strike to the temple could drop a man without a second blow. That was why knuckles mattered to robbers, saloon toughs, and men who wanted violence without pulling steel. They fit into a pocket, made no noise while carried, and turned the most ordinary gesture in a barroom, a punch, into a weapon strike. A gunshot brought attention from 3 streets away. Brass knuckles worked inside the beaten or being quietly prepared for the floor. Number 18, the loaded cane. A cane made a man look respectable. A loaded cane made that respectability useful. The trick was simple. Add weight to the head or shaft so the walking stick became a concealed club. In a frontier town, a gambler, land shark, crooked collector, or older outlaw could carry one through a hotel lobby without looking armed at all. Then, in a close argument, the cane did not swing like polished wood. It landed like metal. A strike across the wrist could knock a knife loose. A blow behind the ear could fold a man before he could draw. That is why loaded canes show up in late-century weapon laws alongside Bowie knives and brass knuckles. Authorities understood the danger. The weapon was not frightening because it looked brutal. It was frightening because it looked civilized right up until the moment it hit. Number 17, the sword cane. This one took the same lie and sharpened it. From the outside, it was still a cane. Handle, shaft, polished finish, nothing more. Inside was a hidden blade. A man could enter a room looking like he carried support for a bad knee and leave someone bleeding from a weapon nobody saw until the sheath came apart. The sword cane was perfect for the kind of violence that depended on surprise. No belt knife, no visible holster, no warning on the hip, just a twist, a pull, and suddenly the walking stick in a man's hand had become a stabbing weapon. That is why towns and territories kept naming sword canes in concealed weapon laws. It was not the honest duelist's weapon, it was the weapon of the man who wanted to arrive underestimated. Number 16, the sand club. It looked even less impressive than the cane. A small leather pouch, cloth sack, or flexible pocket club packed with sand, shot, or another heavy filling. Nothing shiny, nothing dramatic, but swung short and hard, it carried weight like a stone while still bending around bone. The sand club was ugly because it did not need a fair angle. It could be brought down on the side of the head in an alley, behind a freight depot, or beside a gambling table just after the lamps went low. The victim might never see what hit him. To anyone glancing afterward, it could look like a fist fight, a fall, or bad luck. That quietness was the weapon's real advantage. A pistol made a story. A sand club could leave a body and almost no story at all. Number 15. The blackjack or sap. This was not a weapon built for distance, honor, or warning. It was built for one short motion at arm's length, usually made from leather and packed with lead, shot, or another heavy core. A blackjack looked small enough to dismiss until it came down behind the ear or across the side of the skull. A pistol needed room. A knife needed commitment. A sap only needed a blind spot. That made it useful in alleys, stage depots, saloon corridors, and hotel rooms where a robber wanted a man quiet before the fight became loud. One good swing could drop someone without a gunshot or a broken bottle. And if the attacker moved fast enough, witnesses might only see a man collapse and another man reaching for his pockets. The blackjack did not win duels. It ended conversations. Number 14. The slungshot. Today the word sounds almost made up. In the 19th century, people knew exactly why it was dangerous. A slungshot was a weighted knot or metal-filled end attached to a short cord, small enough to hide in a coat pocket and brutal enough to turn a wrist flick into a skull-breaking blow. The motion was part swing, part snap. By the time the weight arrived, it carried far more force than its size suggested. That is what made it perfect for men who wanted a weapon that looked like nothing until it moved. A slungshot could hang loose in the hand like a scrap of cord. Then, the arm snapped, and the weight came around the side of a man's head, his jaw, his temple, or the back of his neck. It was fast, quiet, and ugly. No chamber to cock, no blade to unfold, no warning worth remembering afterward. It frightened lawmakers enough to be named again and again in old concealed weapon restrictions, often beside Bowie knives, brass knuckles, and cane weapons. That list tells you where people placed it in their minds. The slungshot was not some sailor's curiosity that drifted inland by accident. It was recognized as a serious street weapon. In the wrong hand, a few inches of cord and a weighted knot could turn a pocket into a murder weapon. Number 13, the boot dagger. A belt knife could be seen. A boot knife could wait. That was the whole point. An outlaw sitting at a card table, talking beside a horse trough, or getting searched quickly at the waist might still have a narrow blade strapped against the ankle or tucked inside the boot. From the outside, he looked disarmed. From the floor up, he was not. The boot dagger mattered because it arrived from an angle people did not watch. A man bent as if fixing a strap or checking a spur. His hand came back with steel. In a close fight, that few seconds of surprise could be enough. The blade was not built for chopping or dramatic slashes. It was built to stab where there was no time to react. A hidden weapon does not need to be impressive. It only needs to appear when the other man has stopped looking. Number 12, the lariat used as a weapon. Everyone remembers the rope around a steer's horns. Fewer people think about what 60 feet of braided rawhide could do to a man. In practiced hands, a lariat did not have to kill immediately to become terrifying. It could hook an arm, snatch a leg, yank a rider out of the saddle, or close around the upper body and drag him hard enough to break him against the ground. That gave outlaws and rough riders something guns could not always provide: control before the killing. A shot ended the moment. A rope captured it. A man could be pulled from a horse before he understood the loop had settled. He could hit the earth shoulder first, lose his breath, and find himself being dragged before he could reach a weapon. If the rope tightened near the neck, the danger changed fast. That is what made the lariat so much darker than its ranch tool reputation. It belonged everywhere in the West, which meant nobody looked twice at it. A coil on a saddle horn could be work equipment, horse gear, or the first part of an attack. The difference was who threw it. Number 11, the camp hatchet. Every trail outfit, mining shack, and line camp had some version of one nearby because wood had to be cut, stakes had to be driven, and cooking fires had to stay alive. That everyday usefulness made the hatchet dangerous. It never needed to be smuggled in. It was already on the wall, beside the chopping block, or near the bedroll. In a frontier killing, that mattered. A man could walk into a camp unarmed and still find a weapon before anyone finished asking why he was there. The hatchet was short, fast, and heavy enough at the head to do terrible damage in a cramped room. A knife required repeated work if the first strike failed. A hatchet could end the matter with one clean descent to the skull, collarbone, or hand gripping a doorframe. That is why tools belong in this list. Outlaws did not always need specialized weapons. Sometimes the deadliest object was the one every honest man kept within reach. Number 10. The Green River Knife. It was not built to look legendary. That was part of its danger. The Green River Knife was a working blade, the kind traders, hunters, trappers, and frontiermen carried because it could skin game, cut rope, trim leather, open food sacks, and still settle a fight at arm's length. It did not need a dramatic guard or a polished duelist's profile. It only needed a sharp edge and a place on the belt. That made it common, and common weapons are easy to underestimate. A man wearing one did not look like he had arrived for blood. He looked prepared for ordinary work. But if a gambling debt soured, if a camp argument turned hard, or if a robbery tightened in a hallway, the same blade used on hides and cordage could cross into flesh in a second. The Green River Knife was dangerous because it belonged everywhere. No one had to explain why he was carrying it. Number 9. The Belduque. This was a knife from the borderlands world, tied to the Spanish and Mexican frontier, rather than the polished myths people usually inherit from Hollywood westerns. Long enough to matter, practical enough to carry, and shaped for serious work, the Belduque occupied a darker space than an ordinary pocket knife. It was not a tiny backup blade. It was a cutting weapon a man could wear openly and use quickly. That matters in the Southwest, where ranching, trail work, trade, and violence overlapped constantly. A Belduque could be part of a horseman's gear until the moment it became part of a fight. Its danger came from that overlap. It did not need to announce itself as an outlaw's special tool. It fit naturally into a world where men already carried blades for work and where a quarrel could stop being verbal with almost no warning. The Belduque is forgotten now because later knife legends swallowed the spotlight. On the frontier, forgotten did not mean harmless. Number 8. The dirk or dagger. Unlike the Green River Knife or the Belduque, this one did not need a respectable working excuse. A dagger was carried to stab. That blunt purpose made it especially feared in towns trying to regulate concealed weapons. A short, rigid blade could disappear inside a coat, sit beneath a vest, or ride close to the body until the exact second it mattered. In a room where guns were banned, checked at the door, or simply too clumsy to use at grappling distance, a dagger stayed relevant. It did not require a wide swing. It did not need space. It was made for forward motion, for the ribs, the belly, the gap under an arm. A man carrying one had already chosen a kind of violence that belonged close enough to hear the other person breathe. That is what separated the dagger from tools that happened to become weapons. The dagger arrived with no innocent job attached. Number 7. The Arkansas toothpick. The name sounds almost playful until you picture the thing. This was a long, narrow stabbing knife, often much longer than a pocket blade, and built around reach more than utility. It did not exist to peel fruit, shave kindling, or slice bacon by a campfire. It existed to go in deep. That made it terrifying in a close confrontation. A shorter knife forced two men nearly chest to chest. An Arkansas toothpick gave its owner more distance while still keeping the violence intimate. In a doorway, beside a card table, or in the cramped space between saloon furniture, that extra reach mattered. The first man to extend the blade could touch the other before the other had fully committed to the attack. Its reputation grew because it belonged to the same knife culture that made people fear concealed steel almost as much as firearms. Legislators treated blades like this seriously for a reason. A revolver might misfire, jam, or be hard to draw in a tangle. A long stabbing knife asked for almost nothing once the hand was on it. One direct thrust could turn a quarrel into a fatal wound without the blast of a gun or the warning of smoke. The Arkansas toothpick was theatrical in appearance, but its use was brutally simple. Point, lunge, end the distance. Number 6, the Bowie knife. No non-gun weapon from the Wild West carries more mythology, and that mythology can hide the reason men feared it in the first place. The Bowie was large enough to dominate a close fight, broad enough to slash with authority, and pointed enough to stab when the opening came. It was not just a big knife. It was a weapon built to stay dangerous through several kinds of movement. That versatility mattered. A small dagger is fast but limited. A camp knife can kill, but it was designed for work. The Bowie knife sat in a harder category. In a brawl, it could hack at an arm trying to draw, rip across a chest, or drive forward into the body with force. The guard helped keep the hand from sliding onto the blade during a hard thrust. The size alone changed how another man had to move around it. That is why the Bowie knife became a legal and cultural obsession. Men carried it because it made them more dangerous at close range. Opponents feared it because a fight could turn decisive before anyone managed to reach a pistol. Lawmakers kept trying to restrict it because they understood exactly what kind of injuries it produced. Hollywood remembers the silhouette. Frontiermen remembered what happened when one came out within arm's reach. A revolver made noise. A Bowie knife made contact. Number 5. The black powder safe charge. Train robbers and safe breakers did not always attack the guard first. Sometimes they attacked the box holding the money. Before dynamite became the more famous outlaw explosive, black powder was already being packed into locks, doors, and express safes to force them open by violence instead of patience. The goal was simple: turn iron into failure before anyone inside the car had time to organize. That made the safe charge more than a burglary trick. It was a weapon against the entire space around it. A blast meant shattered wood, flying metal, smoke, confusion, and men suddenly trying to decide whether they were under robbery or under siege. The outlaw did not need a clean shot. He needed the room to become unsafe all at once. Black powder could do that. Number 4. The dynamite bundle. Once dynamite entered the frontier crime world, robberies changed tone. A bundle of sticks carried a different kind of threat than a revolver. A gun pointed at one man. Dynamite threatened everyone close enough to hear the fuse hiss. Railroad robbers used it against express safes because it could force open what tools in time could not. But the blast did not always stop politely at the safe door. That was the frightening part. A poorly controlled explosion could tear up the interior of a rail car, splinter wood, throw fragments, rupture metal, and leave passengers or guards exposed to the damage whether they had resisted or not. The outlaw did not need to know precisely where every body stood. The weapon punished proximity. Anyone too close became part of the risk. Dynamite also changed the emotional structure of a robbery. A masked man with a pistol still had to speak, threaten, dominate. A man holding explosives could shorten the conversation. Open it or it blows. Move or it blows. Waste my time and everyone here starts praying. That was not a duel and not even an ordinary holdup. It was control through shared terror. Number 3. The nitroglycerin bottle. This was one of the strangest and most frightening tools in the outlaw world because it did not always look like a weapon at all. A bottle could be mistaken for liquor, medicine, or some ordinary liquid carried in a satchel. In the hands of safe breakers, nitroglycerin became a way to attack vaults, doors, and locks with a force far beyond what its appearance suggested. That mismatch made it terrifying. A knife looked dangerous, a bomb looked dangerous, a small bottle looked manageable, almost domestic, until everyone in the room understood what it contained. Safe men used it because iron that resisted chisels and drilling could fail suddenly under explosive force. Robbers liked anything that compressed time, and nitroglycerin did exactly that. It turned minutes of work into one violent instant, but it also carried danger for the men handling it. A bottle that slipped, a careless jolt, a wagon bounce, one mistake in movement. The weapon did not care whose side it was on. That is what gave nitroglycerin its outlaw aura. It offered enormous power in a fragile form. A criminal could ride with it hidden among ordinary supplies, while carrying enough force to turn metal, wood, and bone into the same problem at once. Number 2. The hidden prison-made blade. Outlaws did not always stay armed when the law finally caught them. Jailers searched belts, boots, coats, pockets. But a man locked behind bars had time, desperation, and access to scraps that looked harmless until they changed shape. A piece of metal worked against stone. A stolen tool ground down. A sliver of iron sharpened in secret. Piece by piece, a prison shiv appeared where no weapon was supposed to exist. That kind of blade was never elegant. It did not need to be. Its value was surprise. In a jail corridor, during an escape attempt, or in a cell where one prisoner decided another had become a problem, a hidden shiv could do enough damage before guards understood what they were seeing. The body count of the Old West was not limited to men still riding free. Some killings began after the doors had already been locked. Number 1, the Outlaws' explosive ambush. This was the most dangerous non-gun weapon of all because it stripped the fight of warning. A revolver still required a man to face another man, raise his hand, and enter the moment. An explosive trap could be set earlier and left to wait, under a door, near a strongbox, along a route someone was expected to take, around a site men assumed was safe enough to approach. That is why it belongs at number 1. A hidden blade kills up close. A club needs the attacker nearby. A knife demands nerve and distance measured in inches. An explosive ambush lets the outlaw strike from absence. The victim can be walking, opening, lifting, stepping, or entering. Then, the space itself turns against him. The Wild West myth remembers gunfights because they are clean to frame. 2 men, 1 street, 1 draw. But many killers preferred weapons that made a fair fight impossible. A weighted cord from a pocket, a blade inside a cane, a rope from horseback, a bottle that looked harmless, a charge waiting where someone believed he was safe. Revolvers became the symbol of Western violence. Hidden weapons and explosives often did the dirtier work before a gun ever cleared leather. Tell me which one surprised you most: the slingshot, the sword cane, the nitroglycerin bottle, or the explosive ambush? And tell me what state you're watching from. If you want more of the Old West the movies leave out, subscribe and like the video.